Welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Allen-cardoza, and each week, this show will address many ways of creating greater health, joy, and love for you and your family. We will introduce you to top professionals and talented authors who are working to make this world a better place for all of us. Now, I'd really appreciate it if you could all do me a big favor. Please forward this show to your social media group and to someone you know who can benefit from today's subject. This is one powerful way that we can make a positive difference together. Now, I want you all to know that I am truly grateful that you take your time to listen to, or in some cases, watch this show, and especially those that send in questions, comments, reviews, and suggestions. Because please remember, this show exists for you. And for those of you that are listening and you want to watch, you can go to our YouTube page and you'll be able to watch us there. If you're wondering what some of us look like rather than just listening. Now, our topic today is also the title of our guest's new book, The 10 Commandments of Marriage, Secrets of a Divorce Lawyer. Our guest, David W. Erdman, is a highly regarded divorce trial lawyer and public speaker based in Charlotte, North Carolina. As a lawyer who has worked with more than 5,000 divorce clients, David rejects the scorched earth tactics. Instead, he believes in helping couples face divorce to find common ground so that they can co-parent successfully. Now, happily married himself for more than 35 years, David states that his goal is to help people, whether clients or audience members, to think strategically about how to improve their marriages and, if they must part ways, how to do it with integrity. David's law degree is from Georgetown University, and he also holds an engineering degree from Duke University, where he received the university's top academic scholarship. David, welcome to Answers Network.
Alan, I'm delighted to be with you. Thank you for the privilege of being with you and your audience.
All right. Well, David, once I heard about you, I had to meet you, if for no other reason, to find out what kind of divorce lawyer writes a book to encourage people not to get divorced.
Well, I actually have a higher opinion of divorce lawyers than the public at large, because I believe many of my counterparts would like to see people save their marriage. It's impossible to see the waste of a great relationship and a great partnership that we witness every single day without feeling, couldn't there have been some way to save this marriage? And I do believe, and the reason I wrote the book, and I guess you're going to show them the book, and I hope 10 Commandments of Marriage, is because I hope they won't ever come see me. I hope they won't need to come see me. Maybe I can say that after all the years I practiced, and I might not have said it as a young lawyer, but I felt it even as a young lawyer. I wanted people's marriage to just work out. And so these are positive lessons. The 10 Commandments of Marriage are positive lessons that I hope keep people out of the divorce lawyer's office.
Well, I think one of the reasons why I felt synergy, as I learned about you and your book, was as an international detective, I found myself telling potential clients that wanted us to do investigations, not to investigate. And I said, at this point in time, what you've told me is enough to where I feel like all I would be doing as a detective is turning the knife. I go, you know what it is that you believe is happening. You know all of these things. And my office was next door to a psychologist. And I said, there's a really good psychologist next door. I think you'd be better off to go talk with them. And then if you still feel like you need to go into this from an investigation standpoint, then we can talk about it. But right now, I think that you probably should be looking at the psychological aspects of these things rather than trying to find proof that is just going to make you feel worse.
Well, Alan, I salute you for taking that position. I agree. I would not. I've told clients my entire career that I'm not going to be the instrument of their vindictiveness. I am going to be a champion of their legal rights. I'm going to help them investigate the case using private investigators, as we have to sometimes, want to sometimes.
Sure.
Because one of my beliefs is that people deserve to know the truth about their own marriage. And sometimes the only way you can find out the truth is the help of a private investigator like yourself. But once we know what is legally sufficient, if they want to find out more, that's on them. That's not something I need to encourage or help them with.
Yeah, and I think like any profession, I know you said earlier, you said that you know that there are a lot of other lawyers like yourself that are more focused on just doing what's right. Like any profession, there are those that don't, and they end up getting the publicity, and they end up people end up wanting to talk more about that than the fact that there are really good people that just want to help you do something in an ethical fashion. So I'm really glad that you touched on that.
Well, Alan, let me explain something for your audience. I know you know this. We lawyers are obligated to champion our clients' best interests. And although I don't presume to tell them what their best interest is outside of the legal sphere, if I recognize and they express what their best interest is, then my goal is to help them. And so even if my colleagues, or even if I, are not as saintly as it may sound to say we try to help people save their marriages, if that's in the client's best interest, that's our duty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I'm smiling because at the time in which I'm doing this show, and I realize the person that's texting me probably doesn't realize that, but I'm getting a text that says, can you give me a referral to an attorney? I need one who will fight for my client. I happen to be getting a text right now about that, and this is an investigator that I also know, and I know he's in another state, so he probably needs something in California.
May I say this? It's probably a good, important disclaimer. I'm a lawyer in North Carolina, in Charlotte, North Carolina, and although my book is by no means limited to North Carolina law, because I don't talk about law, I talk about saving marriages. At the same time, if we chance to talk about some matter of law, it would only be a North Carolina matter about which I would have any professional opinion.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask in regards to just motivation to write the book. So as we said in the beginning, you've been a divorce attorney for a very long time. You've worked with a lot of families. Was there a particular trigger that said, you know what, I think I need to get more information out there to people to look at this a little differently? What was the trigger for you?
Well, let me start by saying I like the way you introduced the whole show: health, joy, and love. And those are like concentric circles of what life is about. Although I put the marriage in the center in my book. Mm-hmm. And I just feel, as I approach a certain age, that it would be missing an opportunity to share if I didn't put it down in writing. If only my two adult, happily married daughters would read it, that would be enough for me. Mm-hmm. But if others find it beneficial, and I believe they will if they look at it, and particularly if they're about to get married, or maybe having some trouble in their marriage, or here's a big one. Out there in California, we HEAR here, that you like to sign prenups. I contend that premarital agreements, which is what they're technically known as nationwide, premarital agreements are almost like planning a divorce in advance. And I want to get that word out there because I have people come in and say they want a premarital agreement. And I want to hear, what is it that they need to protect? What do they want to protect against? Because they may have a legitimate concern. And again, I'm not the one telling them whether it's legitimate or not. That's up to them. But I'll point out that if it cost them their marriage in the first 4 or 5 years because they tried to protect some asset, was that the best plan? And so I actually created a way for people to write premarital agreements that I hope this book may promote. And that is, I've created the phrase milestones. Now, we all know that milestones exist in real life,
Sure.
but milestones in a marriage are like 5 years into the marriage, or the birth of a first child, or 10 years into the marriage, or 15 years of the marriage. And I contend that if you start out with a premarital agreement, it should phase out as certain milestones are met. And by doing that, both spouses have something to look forward to in the marriage. It takes the negative of a premarital agreement and flips it over to become a positive. The goals are set within the marriage. And I've had clients be pleased that they wrote their agreements that way over the years that I've championed that point of view.
Yeah, and that sounds like, I mean, you're really trying to go for that win-win situation. I think too often people are of the belief that they have to go into this situation as a win-lose. And, you know, it gets all the publicity, you know, that, you know, the dirtier it is or the uglier it gets, it's going to end up, you know, if it's, you know, Hollywood starlet or something like that, it's going to end up on the front page. If it's dirty, it's nasty. They don't take the time to put it on there. If they say everybody's doing great, they were able to separate, they're co-raising the children and everything is going great, you don't see that end up in the media that often. So how does one create a true win-win situation that works for the entire family? Well,
by the way, if they're actually separating, then one of the points I make in this book is that for the rest of their lives, each spouse will probably only spend 1/2 as much time with each child as they did when they all lived together. It'll be a split. And it'll be a split even when the kids are grown up, because the kid doesn't want mama to be upset when they go see daddy, or vice versa, or even talk about daddy. And so the win-win comes by avoiding it ever getting there. However, you asked the question, I'll try to answer.
Sure.
I point out to my clients, every one of who sits in this office with me, if they've got children, I volunteer something they're not expecting to hear. And that is, I say, you know, your children are the most important matter in this whole issue, because they're not focused yet on children. And they often say, well, I know that, and that's the way I feel. They don't necessarily behave in a manner that reflects that statement. But I also find that people going through divorce tend to adopt, and this will get back to a point you were making, tend to adopt the personality of the lawyer. If the lawyer says what we've got to do is scorch the earth under that other person, presumably the client's not been through a divorce before. So they imagine that's good advice. If they meet with someone who advises them that our goal should be to turn up the heat only as far as it has to be turned up to get to as amicable as possible a settlement. And that's what I talk with my clients about. I actually use the image of an old-time stove with it starts with simmer and goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, boil. And if we can get it at 3 instead of 7 or boil, we've saved them money and we haven't crushed all aspects of the relationship between a mother and a father, because we're back to those children being the most important asset. An asset's not a good word for children, but they're the most important consideration.
Yes. Yeah. Well, David, as you were doing that and you were holding your hand up, and I was thinking, and we're probably in the same general age range, you're dating yourself because there are younger people going, oh, wait a minute, isn't everything digital now? You just push a button.
I have to show them a picture. Show them what I'm talking about.
The younger ones, you go, this is the way it used to be.
That's right. Your grandmother had this. Okay, that's right. That's right. Well, you know, they say hire a young doctor, but an old lawyer, because there's benefit in new technology on the medicine side, but there's benefit in experience on the lawyer side.
I like that. I like that. So and what I hear you saying, it's a lot about communication. So, I mean, it really sounds like and I'm not suggesting you're practicing this, but you're focusing a lot on the psychology of this to get them to communicate better amongst themselves, which I think is beautiful because the other end of the spectrum seems to be the attorneys that tell them, do not communicate with each other, do not say everything. Everything now goes through us, of which I've never liked. How do you achieve that when you're only one side of this communication you're trying to set up, if the other side already has an attorney that's telling them the opposite?
By the way, I have a diagram I just drew because of what you said. You see this? You see that it has to do with my engineering degree. I always want to draw a diagram, and I show my clients diagrams that I actually have created and copyrighted when they're in my office. But this would be a man and a wife, a father, a husband and a wife talking directly with each other. Mm-hmm. If they can't talk directly with each other, then wife talks to her lawyer.
Right.
Her lawyer talks to this lawyer, who talks to the guy, and it goes back and forth. This is insanely expensive.
Yep.
Unless it's one of those circumstances where it's the only way that will work. It doesn't make any sense because there's a billable event when the client talks to the lawyer. There are two billable events when the lawyers talk to each other, another billable event over here. These people can talk with each other for free. But you may not know, we lawyers are ethically precluded from telling our clients to circumvent the other lawyer. We're not allowed to do that. What I do, and what I have done within the last month, is I contact the other lawyer and I say, let's agree on what our clients can talk about. For example, can they talk freely about any matter related to the children? And I say they should be able to. And the other lawyer says, okay, that's good. And I say, now look, they might settle this case themselves if they talk. Can they talk about that? And what the other guy said to me, and I think he was a smart lawyer, he said, yes, they can even talk about the terms of the case, but you cannot pin. I'm representing the man in that case. Yeah. He's representing the woman. I've been about 50-50 male and female over my career. He said, but you cannot try to pin her down to an actual settlement. You can talk concepts, go back to me for details. But you're right. Some lawyers say, do not talk to that other person. And that begins an estrangement that becomes lifelong in too many cases. But it also begins sometimes an estrangement between a savvy client and their lawyer. Because the savvy client says, that's costing me more money. That's making it worse. By the way, I'm a doctor's son. My father's no longer living, but the basic rule of medicine, you know what it is first, do no harm.
No harm.
And so I came into law with an attitude of, well, whatever else I do, I don't want to do any harm. And so making it worse has been what I've tried to avoid. I can't always make it better, but I can avoid making it worse. And I work hard at that. But again, I want them not to have to come see me at all. Or if they do, I want to show them sometimes this happens, that their marriage, something's happened in their marriage. But it's not as wounding as, let's say, sexual infidelity. It's credit card spending in some outrageous amount. And I say, that's a bad problem. You folks have got to get a handle on that. And whichever spouse it is needs to work on that. But that doesn't mean you need to come see me and we need to talk about a divorce, unless there's something else you haven't told me that's worse. Oh, no, I'm here about the credit cards. And I say, well, I'll tell you what, I hope you'll go back and straighten out your husband or wife and tell them that it's unacceptable. But you're going to work on the marriage with them. They need to do their part.
Well, I'm glad you put the diagram up there so that people could see the almost ridiculousness about having to do that for every little thing and how much it costs you. And most everybody knows attorneys are not cheap. And you've been kind with your cohorts. But I want to tell a story so that some people understand why it's important that you get a good attorney, that you get one that is truly focused on your family and what is going to be best for them. And I told this story to my nephew when he was going through a divorce many years ago. So as a young detective, I was to meet the attorney with the evidence that we got. I was to meet him at the courthouse in the lunchroom to go in and give him the file and show what we had found. So I went to meet him, sat down, gave it to him, and then in the middle of our talking, another attorney came up that was from a completely different case. It had nothing to do with the case that we were talking about. But he excused me, but didn't tell me to leave, just said, "Excuse me, I need to handle this." And he turns, and in front of me, they proceeded to talk about how they were fueling the flames of their own clients because it was going to generate more money. They had that conversation in front of me in the courtroom, lunchroom at the courthouse. And so I told that story when my nephew said that, he and his wife were going to go through a divorce. And I said, try everything you can to not go through this. But if you must, make sure that you get the right attorney, because unfortunately, there are some like that out there that are going to make a bad name for everybody.
I'm outraged at hearing that. I can even imagine it happening, but I can't imagine I believe you, by the way, but I cannot imagine the presumptuousness of the other lawyer presuming that the first lawyer would agree with him. Oh my, we've got to build this up and make it worse. Yeah, that's outrageous. And in fact, within the last hour before I got on this communication with you, I received a referral from a marital mediator, because I certainly happily refer people to marital mediators, because the lawyer's role is at least to write legal documents. The mediators can't write legal documents in North Carolina. They can come to a term sheet, things that people agree on, a memorandum of understanding, you might call it. And then the client would bring that to a lawyer to write it up into a legal agreement. But that division of labor saves a lot of lawyer work going back and forth in the rectangle, because the two people are talking together with a mediator in a place where that's the purpose, is to talk through their issues and then come up with the terms if they are not successful in saving their marriage.
Now, do you also work as a, and I'm not sure what the term is, but where there's one attorney that represents both sides?
We're not allowed to do that, at least in my state.
In your state.
We're very, very strongly, and if you think about it, I accept that that's a good rule, although other states might have another rule. In North Carolina, no lawyer can presume to represent both sides in any manner. So what happens is, if one of those two people from that mediation comes to me and says, "Need you to write the agreement," I write it. But we then hand it to the other side, and they can take it to a lawyer of their choice. I had this happen last week. I haven't even heard back whether the other side decided to take the document to another lawyer. If not, they can sign it. But we don't let them sign in our office, because that would give the appearance of representing both sides. And we actually have them sign a statement saying they didn't get any advice from the lawyer representing the opposite spouse. Again, it's consistent with my legal obligation to champion my client's best interest. So it can't be diluted by representing the other side. It may be that in some states there are different rules about that. I don't know.
Well, there are. We're going to take a break right now, but for everybody out there, if you know somebody that is going through something like this, and I know that especially, as we're coming out of COVID and stuff, divorce has been on the rise, so there's been a lot of people, that are having trouble with, making things work, feel free to contact them, let them know, see if they can tune in, maybe hear the rest of the show, and they may be able to pick up some things that may help them get through what they're going through. So stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Answers Network.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585, or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
To Answers Network, my guest today is David W. Erdman, and his book is The 10 Commandments of Marriage, but it's the secrets of a divorce lawyer.
Yeah.
So, so David, actually, we've had some questions and comments that have come in. And again, I want to thank those that take the time to send in your questions or comments, some of which I know come in ahead of time because you're working in the middle of the day. But this particular one reads, I just ordered your book as I have a family issue right now that I need to understand more in depth. My son and his wife have been separated for several months. There were no cheating or betrayal issues that I know of. She said she just wanted some time apart to get her own life sorted out. During this sorting out process, she is pushing him, her son, to agree to move where she wants to, which is in another town that's an hour and a half away. Every time he tries to explain to her that this would place an undue burden on him in regards to his drive to work and back, that he would have to spend less quality time with their children, who are now ages 8 and 12. When he says this, she blows up at him. It says, and her work isn't the reason, it's not in this other town. So the only explanation that we can come up with is that she probably wants to have a more active social life where she will not run into him or other family members and friends in the community that they live in. She shows no interest in reconciliation. But is there anything we can contribute to the situation that may help her see the incredible man she's tossing aside? And this is from Vera in Florida.
By the way, I love grandparents, and I'll tell you, judges love grandparents. They believe more than parents who have their own fight going on and therefore their own manipulative motives sometimes. But grandparents see those grandchildren, and they have had the experience of raising children themselves. And so judges really listen to grandparents. Now, the problem is the opposing spouse, the in-law spouse, doesn't necessarily listen to the in-laws. This doesn't sound like what I call a classic in-law problem. A classic in-law problem is where there's been oppression, I'll say, by you picture some of these movie scenes where you're meeting the parents, and the parent, undoubtedly, the daddy is always some imposing figure, like an investigator like yourself, or maybe an imposing figure like a lawyer like me, and so the male meeting the father-in-law to be is intimidated. That's an in-law problem.
Right.
But when people want to relocate, and if there is no obvious reason then the reason obviously has not been disclosed.
Sure.
I'm the author of a statement, and they republished it in the New York Times a few years ago, of a simple statement, a truism, and that is, secretive people have a secret.
Mm-hmm.
I've observed that people are very open. Most people are very open about anything that's not their secret. But when you get to their secret, they're not open. So if this woman wants to move to another town an hour and a half away, one would want to know, what is the secret? Now, I'll tell you this, and I even mention this in the book because it sometimes has to happen. And I'm not suggesting this is what's happened in that case, and I, of course, have no idea what's happened in that case. But I'll tell you what's happened in other cases. I've seen circumstances where an extramarital affair occurred in town A.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way that the victim spouse, the one who's been wronged by the infidelity, is willing to believe that the infidelity is over is if they move an hour and a half away as a couple. Because what that does is it sends a strong message to the paramour back home that we've left you behind, and they get a new start in a new town. So I would like to think that she wanted to move an hour and a half for that good reason. But if there's no well-expressed reason, by the way, here's the test. This would be a good test.
Mm-hmm.
If she wants to move an hour and a half away, how about we move an hour and a half in the opposite direction?
Nice.
Then, if getting away from the place where they currently live is the point, an hour and a half in the other direction will work. If going, you understand what happens.
Right.
If going an hour and a half to a particular place is the goal, then that suggests that there's more than just getting away.
Good point. Now, you bring up in your book, and you talk about some very unique techniques, in regards to ways that you believe can strengthen a great marriage, or in some cases, revive a troubled one. Share some of those techniques for our listeners.
Well, that gets down to the commandments themselves. And just, for people who know the biblical 10 commandments, there's the first commandment. And that's the one about putting God above all else. But in a marriage, the first commandment is thou shalt be equals. And I point out all the ways that I've observed that inequality either starts out in the marriage, that's what a premarital agreement does. It creates inequality from the day it's signed, or evolves during the marriage. Because the other 9 commandments, things like being a team and staying close with each other and appreciating each other, communicating with each other, these are all corollaries, I'll call it, of a commandment to treat each other as equals. And the way I look at it is, it's up to both spouses. The one who seems to be on the ascendance should be responsible, figuratively, to pull the other one up to that level. And likewise, the one who feels left behind should say, hey, I want to be up on your level. We got into this as equals, and we're going to stay as equals. And I cite a couple of examples, assuming without mentioning any names.
Sure.
In fact, let me mention the Hollywood example.
Good.
Since you're out there, it's actually a fictional example. It's the movie Notting Hill. But in Notting Hill, this world famous actress falls in love with the bookstore owner in Notting Hill.
Yep.
She's world famous. Her face is on the buses that drive by in London. And he feels, and I talk about this in the book, he feels that he's not her equal. And ultimately, he so thoroughly feels that he writes her off. And then she comes to him and says, I'm just a girl looking to be loved by a boy, which sounds like equality, perfect as it can ever be. Here's the problem. She's a movie star. If we had a sequel to the movie, her 4 lawyers would come in and write her premarital agreement that says he doesn't get any royalties from any of her movies. He doesn't get any royalties from her personal appearances. And right off the bat, it's no longer a girl who loves a boy. They're not equal anymore. And and by the way, if that movie star came to me, and I've had some relatively famous athletes come to me, I would say, I'm looking over the chair where they sit. I would say, okay, protecting royalties from work you did before you got married, that would be separate property under our North Carolina law. Anyway, if you want to set that aside and protect it, sure, it's an inequality between the two of you, but it's in the law. It's not just me. Mm-hmm. However, if you write in that from the day the two of you marry, going forward, it's share and share alike. I don't know if the big money person will be happy, but the other spouse will feel treated as an equal, and they'll probably make it in their marriage.
I like it. So we have another question that's coming in, and this one reads, 5 years ago, my husband left me for a younger woman. Quite a blow at first, but in my heart, I knew their relationship would not last. Now divorced from her, he is calling to get together outside of the holidays that we mutually spend with our grown children and grandchildren. Every time I think about opening up to the idea, I have this heart freeze twinge of mistrust I can't get past. So far, I have kept him at bay, but there are times when I truly miss him in my life and those evenings of cuddling on the couch, watching movies, etc. What advice do you have for me? And does your book deal with ex-married people with a history like ours? And this is from Sheila in Minnesota.
I don't know if my book deals with it, but my life as a lawyer certainly has dealt with it. But let me mention something else in the book, and it happens to be an example from another movie, the movie The American President. In the movie The American President, the president dashes the romantic desires of his girlfriend, and then he regrets it. And he's in the Oval Office, and his aide says, "Sir, how are you going to get her back?" And the famous line is, "I'm sure some groveling will be involved." So it may be that mistrustful husband he doesn't have to grovel. He needs to satisfy her that he's for real. And that may take a long time. And to him, it may feel as if he's groveling. But what she wants to know is it real this time, or are we going to play this again? I know this. There's a very, very high probability that they're adult children who do not get to make the decision. The married people make the decision. But I bet those adult children will be extremely happy if that happens. So at least that audience is going to be supportive of a reconciliation. But they've also seen their mom be hurt, and they don't want her to be hurt again. And so they too may offer their opinions to her about how dad's doing this time, and whether dad has said to them he's sincere and on the level this time. And that's the great thing about having those adult kids, because they'll take up for the parent they feel has been wronged. Usually.
Well, yeah. And so, yeah, what I hear you saying is, and it sounds like that it may be good maybe to get a little counseling first before you just let your emotions make decisions for you.
That's right. It's not a legal decision. It's a matter of the heart and a matter of the brain. Exactly.
So another thing that you talk about in the book is you talk about the root cause of divorce. And you talk a little bit about how to untangle it. Can you speak to this a little bit?
Well, I don't know that there is a single root cause of divorce. I think all recognize that sexual infidelity is the most wounding and searing, but continued put downs, just always diminishing the other as some sort of a servant, some sort of minion, accumulates, just like the heartbreaking discovery of an infidelity. But different people have money problems. They have in-law problems, as I mentioned. They have infidelity problems. But I believe that the core first commandment, thou shalt be equals, entitles people to ask their spouse whatever they're suspicious about. And one of my commandments is, thou shalt apologize and forgive. And it's my contention that people who don't apologize are treating their spouse as less than an equal. They will apologize to a person who's equal, and they'll darn well apologize to somebody they view as above the chain on them somewhere. But the whole idea is this is mutual, equal. But if they want to talk about sex, I will say this. I shift the burden. In my mind, the commandment I wrote is, thou shalt communicate your needs to make sex fulfilling for both of you. So it's not enough to say to your spouse, you're not doing, this isn't working for us. Mm-hmm. It's my job to define what it is I need and to express that. And it's the spouse's job to express what they need, as opposed to the classic standoff of, if I have to tell you what I need, it doesn't count. You might have heard that somewhere.
Absolutely. Now you mentioned the that obviously the book is the 10 Commandments of Marriage, and you shared the first commandment. We've got about 2 minutes left. Share with us a couple of other commandments that seem to that seem to come across your desk most often, where you're having to share those with them when you're talking with clients.
Well, I'll tell you what, all of my commandments are positive. Thou shalt, thou shalt, thou shalt, except one. And the one is, thou shalt not allow children to obstruct your marriage. So if we're going to spend the last minute and a half talking, I would point out that in young couples, there's a syndrome. And the syndrome, not every young couple, of course, but they need to work to make sure they're not the young couple for whom it happens. And that is the mother, the young mother, who has borne the child for 9 months, and they're obviously attached, and has gone through the travail of the delivery of a baby. The daddies sometimes feel neglected. The daddies sometimes feel, maybe they don't define it as jealousy, but there's a sense of jealousy that the mother is paying more attention to the child than to the daddy. By the way, children have to be looked after, and daddies need to understand that. But mothers need to understand that daddies can feel neglected. So thou shalt not allow children to obstruct the marriage. Find time. Hire babysitters and go out to dinner. Find times to be alone, even if it means having sex in the afternoon because the baby's going to cry all night. Whatever it takes, don't let the children be an obstruction in the marriage.
Well said. David, thank you so much for coming on. Now, what is the best way for people to get the book or to get in touch with you if they would like?
Well, Alan, the book's on Amazon. Okay. 10 Commandments of Marriage, Secrets of a Divorce Lawyer. And in the book, it tells them how they can get in touch with me. I won't be practicing law in any state but North Carolina, but I do care about their marriages, which is why I wrote the book. And I hope there will be people who will find it helpful. I believe they will. Thank you, Alan.
Well, you're very welcome. And again, as I said, you're such a perfect fit for the show because, as I said in the beginning, the reason for this show is to make a positive influence. And that's what you're doing. And the way that I see it, you're doing it. You were doing it in North Carolina, and then you thought, okay, how can I make a bigger footprint by making a positive difference? So you wrote a book so that you could reach more people. And I think that's beautiful. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And for everybody out there, I want to share another quote from David because I thought it expressed it very well. And that was, by reading this book, most likely you'll never need to meet a divorce lawyer. How about that, huh? So if that's not positive, I don't know what is. So anyway, so again, thank you so much, David. And for everybody out
Good
there,
luck.
please
Thank you.
join us next Monday when we're going to be joined by Michael Diet to discuss his new book, Moneyfulness, Learning to Live with Money. Sounds like something we could all use. And please visit our archives of past interviews at answers.network, or you can subscribe to the show through iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, SoundCloud, Stitcher, YouTube, Spreaker, BShoot, HughieTube, and many other popular podcast platforms. And if you're not, if you listen to a different podcast or a different platform, and they don't have us, tell them you want Answers Network on their platform as well. So for everybody out there, be good human beings and make a positive difference in somebody's life today. And hopefully you'll be back with us next week on Answers Network.
Hello, I'm Marty Cove. You might remember me from roles such as Sensei in the Karate Kid films. I've done over 100 films and countless stunts in my career, and I've always given 100%. With the damage done to my body over time, I needed to find relief from my chronic pain. My passion for health and fitness drove me to find a natural way to combat muscle pain. Teaming up with doctors, detectives, and a compounding pharmacist, we've created Marty's Cobra Cove Ultra Strength CBD Cream. It's the only thing that has been strong enough to knock out my pain, and fast. Honestly, you may have tried the rest, but it's time to try the best. It's legal, it's safe, and 100% effective. Show your pain no mercy. Go to www.martyscobracove.com.
You're listening to Answers Network with Allen-cardoza, only on LA Talk Radio.